Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to do a video about the news, or the potential news, of the new Beatles song. I wasn't going to do this video, but things are happening pretty fast and new information is getting released, and I've got some pretty strong feelings about the whole subject, so I'll get started, and I hope I don't offend anyone here. I'm just stating my opinion, you don't have to agree with it. First thing I would say is this song, Now and Then, which we all think it will be, was rejected back in the 90s by George, Ringo and Paul. Now there's some talk about whether George Harrison was the one, and whether he rejected the recording, which was pretty rough, or the song itself, or both. So what the news is that they've had the opportunity, using modern technology, to separate out John's vocal and John's piano from the background noise and improve the recording. And maybe this makes for a better listening experience. Personally, when I listened to the demo that which John did, I don't think much of the song. I think it was unfinished. I think it's pretty insipid lyrically. And all these people are talking about the title Now and Then was inspired by the last thing that John said to Paul when he saw him in '76. Think of me every now and then, old friend. Well, I think that's just a coincidence. I mean, now and then is a fairly common phrase, and now and then is only mentioned briefly in the song itself. I don't make the link. Another friend of mine thinks when he listens to the lyrics of Now and Then, it implies that they were about Paul. Again, I don't buy that particular argument. People are entitled to their opinion. Anyway, Giles Martin and Peter Jackson were involved in cleaning up this recording, and by all accounts, Paul has added some instrumentation. Ringo has been persuaded to add a drum track recently, and some information came up from a musician called Penn Jillette, who's part of a magician duo, Penn and Teller, American guy, and he was at Abbey Road with Giles Martin, who was playing him the song and telling him a few things. Now, I don't know why Giles Martin allowed details to get out, whether that was deliberate on the part of the Beatles camp or not. But Penn Jillette did an interview spilling some beans, whether they're true or not, I don't know. First of all, he referred to the anthology sessions as being in the 80s instead of the 90s, and people have picked up on that. Well, if you can't even get that right, so maybe some of the other information is not reliable. But he did firstly say that Paul's vocals had been de-aged to make him sound younger. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but if it is, I don't agree with that. I think it's unfortunate. And then the next thing he had to say was that the harmony, three-part harmony from Because, Giles Martin had taken that, transposed it down to the correct note or relevant notes for the harmony of Now and Then, and dropped it in there. Again, if that's the case, I don't agree with that. I don't think that's legit. It smacks to me as like the Love album Mark II, which Giles Martin was obviously involved in. I don't think this is going to be a bona fide new Beatles song. As a song, it's not up to the standard of Beatles songs, and if one's honest, looking back on it, Free as a Bird and Real Love were barely passable. I guess they just about passed the test, but I think Now and Then was rejected for a reason back then, not just because of the quality of the recording, but just because the song wasn't much. But either way, Free as a Bird and Real Love to me sound like Lennon demos, which the others had added stuff to. They don't really have the heart and the soul of a Beatles recording, and for one, Lennon didn't record them intended to be Beatles songs. So that was my opinion of Now and Then. I'm willing to be proved wrong. I'll buy it, of course, or buy the single. I'll listen to it, and maybe I'll be proved wrong, but I just have a bad feeling about the whole thing, and in a way I'm kind of dreading it, because I think it could hurt the legacy of the Beatles if it's substandard, which I think it is. Other people say their legacy is assured, and this will not be the gateway for new people to get into the Beatles. Well, I hope not, because there's a lot better ways to start listening to the Beatles than listening to Lennon demos where the others have added stuff too. So that was my feeling on Now and Then. Then I heard the news again from this Penn Jillette guy, and others have mentioned it, that unbelievably the Red and the Blue album are going to be remixed, and I can't see any point in this at all. Invisible Ray, I would almost be obliged to say it's altogether pointless. And we got songs, as Matt Williamson, Pop Goes the 60s, pointed out, songs like Eleanor Rigby from the Red album have already been remixed once for Yellow Submarine song track, once for Revolver, and now again for this. I don't think that's necessary. Andrew Dixon was saying we should ditch the original track listing of the Red and Blue and maybe make it somewhere like Past Masters, Volumes 1 and 2. But I don't think you can muck around with the Red and the Blue track listing because the fans grew up on it. A lot of fans grew up with those albums, and if you start mucking around with the track listing, you're going to have a lot of upset people. So what they could do, I guess, still doesn't make much sense, but this is the best plan for, as far as I'm concerned. If they're going to do it, put out the Red and the Blue and have a bonus disc of added material for the Red, such as I Saw Her Standing There, Taxman, Here, There and Everywhere. Stuff for Tomorrow Never Knows, perhaps, and then for the Blue, similar, have things like The Inner Light, You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, and other tracks left off the Blue. But a lot of these tracks have already been remixed for the Revolver, White Album, Pepper, On Abbey Road, Let It Be box sets. So we've already had remixes. Why do we need them again? It's just another, I hate to say, cash grab, but it seems to me. So I think, as far as the track listing is concerned, they should stick with the original if they're going to do the Red and the Blue and put an extra disc on top. But I hope they don't price it through the roof, because fans have already got all of these tracks multiple times on many occasions, and the Past Masters were already remastered in 2009, not remixed, so maybe there'll be some point in doing that. But a lot of the other tracks have already been remixed, such as the tracks on Revolver and Pepper, as I mentioned before, and Abbey Road, Let It Be. So it's interesting because a few years ago when Get Back came out, I thought that was a really good idea of what the Beatles camp should be doing, what should be putting out. That was just a joy have nearly 8 hours of footage from Let It Be, or the Get Back sessions as it was called at the time. I think that's an absolutely perfect way to spend Peter Jackson's time, and I think he should be put to work, as others have said, on the Shea Stadium concert, separating out the instruments there so you can hear it better, and then the Hamburg tapes as well due for a remix, obviously. From the solo stuff, we've got Lennon's New York City concert from Madison Square Garden in 72 in dire need of a remix. George Harrison's 74 tour footage, is it still in existence? So they should do all that rather than fool around with a new compilation album, allegedly trying to break the Beatles into a new generation. But why do we need endless new compilations? I mean, you don't see that from Beethoven or Bach or Mozart, and people coming up with new compilations of their work. Their work stands the test of time, and I think the Beatles will be remembered or not based on the quality of their songs, not on the quality of remix 1, 2 or 3, or separation of the instrumentation. I don't think, as Matt Williams has said, I don't think we need a remix of Please Please Me. I think the original is au courant and was outstanding at the time and is outstanding now. So that's my opinion. I think on the whole, the John Lennon estate has done a good job in putting out stuff, although it tends to concentrate on the most popular albums of his, hasn't yet delved into the other solo stuff. George Harrison estate has been very stingy in what it's put out in terms of bonus material. The Paul McCartney archive releases have been great, but they stopped for some reason, and a couple of big albums from the 70s missing, as we've said. The Beatles camp, well, they got it right with Get Back, even though they sold the rights to Disney, but I don't know what they're doing with Now and Then. I really wish they would, pun not intended, let it be and not put out a new track. When the anthology came out and they used Free as a Bird to sell Anthology 1 and Real Love to sell Anthology 2, I thought that was a bit cynical, because it was totally incongruous listening to Free as a Bird and then all the early outtakes from Anthology 1, and I rarely listened to them together. I tended to skip free as a bird and play the anthology, or vice versa. So I hope they don't put out Now and Then as a kind of taster and you've got to buy it in order to buy some mega new set. I think the fans, Beatles fans, have already spent way too much money. Well, it's a matter of choice, of course, but I've spent way too much money already on all of these albums and songs, multiple versions on vinyl, CD, online versions. Don't really need it. Don't need it, a new Beatles song, however exciting that might sound. I don't think it should be done. That's my opinion. Thank you for watching. See you next time.